So what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna show you guys basically how I do a face framing foil highlight. Now, once again, like I said, face framing foil highlights are a great service as an add-on service for any hair color. You just have to know, as I always say, where you're starting and where you're gonna end. So your client consultation. So I already spoke to Sandy. Yes?
Move up a little bit.
Move up.
Or to the side. Cause like I could go like that.
So just scoot your chair over a little bit.
But I don't want to walk in.
Move up. You know what it is? I'm recording it for the other class too, so I'm just, yeah, I don't wanna, is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I have my client here. I already chatted with her. My first questions to her were, what kind of upkeep does she want? What kind of maintenance can she afford? I mean, unless you're in a high-end salon and a salon that you know your clients already are clear on what they can afford, I always ask my clients if it's in their budget and to know what their maintenance is. Because you can't give someone high maintenance hair who cannot maintain it. And if they choose to do that, you have to be open and honest and work with integrity at all times. I highly recommend that because in the salon world, you want to work on integrity and longevity of your client, meaning I want my client to stay with me 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I want them to stay in the salon and be part of my profit margin. I don't want them coming in today and then going down the street to Jane Salon, or I don't want her to be a salon hopper. So I want to do everything in my power to keep her as my long-term client. So now, you know, we talked to Sandy. She said that she likes to wear her hair natural. I said to her, is this where you have your natural part? Yeah, I usually wear it on the side. If she told me she wears her hair part in the middle, that would change how I was gonna do her face framers. If she wears her hair part in the middle, I would have sectioned it with a middle section like this, right? That way, when I do the little baby highlights and they fall, they're gonna fall this way. But being that she wears a side part, if I do them the other way, she'll be too dark here. So we want to always accentuate more around the front and the part. So I'm going to section off to the side. So it's kind of from the middle of the nose. And again, your sections are going to depend on your client, and they're going to depend on the size of their head, and they're going to depend on the kind of hair they have, right? And in my mind, as I'm sectioning her, I already have a vision to where these baby lights are gonna fall. So you always have to keep the end in mind. Think about your placement. You don't want stripes unless you're doing hair color and they want that stripy look. Some people do like that. I did one on, what was it, Saturday. Someone wanted very bold highlights. It's not something I don't personally like the look, but that's what she wanted. I did it, it looked amazing. Once again, depending on what the client wants. So I feel underneath with my left hand behind the ear, and that's where I pull out the side section. Now, I want you guys to remember something. When you work in a salon, there's gonna be a million right ways to do things. This is a basic foundational strategy step I'm showing you. As you do more advanced work, as you get mentored by other salon owners, as you get mentored and, you know, grow in your field, if you become a colorist, you will create your own style. In some of the videos I share with you with colleagues and high-end colorists who are out there, they've created their own strategies that they found work, and you can incorporate a little bit of theirs, a little bit of mine, anything that works for you. But as long as you have the foundational ideas correct. So for today, now I'm gonna bring you guys over here. So this is not what I would normally use in a salon because it is not a high-end product. I don't personally care for this stuff. It gets the job done, so we're gonna use it. This is a lightener. It is a mild lightener. It's not one of the strongest lighteners out there. I suggest when you're doing color and highlights to get used to wearing gloves. I personally don't wear gloves when I do it, so when I'm done mixing, I will take them off. But that's something I've personally done over the years just because I just like doing without gloves on. But if you get this stuff on your hands, it does burn. You need to rinse it right away because it does start burning your skin. So I take my lightener. Now, once again, now we're wearing masks, but in the days when you don't wear a mask, you carefully scoop this out. I'm gonna take like 3 scoops. So I want you guys to do 2 to 3 scoops each. All right? always close the plastic bag so it doesn't oxidize. Oxidizing means that if you don't close the lid, the product evaporates into the air and it loses its strength. It gets like old, and you don't want that. Same thing with peroxide. You always put the lid on. You make sure it's not stored anywhere freezing. You make sure it's not stored anywhere ridiculously hot because it can lose its strength. Now, now when you're mixing product, some products want you to mix on a scale where you actually know by the weight of it. Some products you could just measure out and follow manufacturer's directions, but as you become in the salon, most people measure out by eye, which you want to, I think it's important. You follow manufacturer's directions, but you also want to develop, here, and I want to show you guys the consistency of how this is coming together. Here, I'm showing you guys. See, and I'm like gathering it. It's like I'm making a cake. I'm folding over, making sure I get all the, see how it's nice and creamy? Now, if it starts to get hard and crusty while you're working, this happens to smell like blueberry. You can always add more developer. I use 20 volume because we're doing a basic highlight. Some colorists, if they're doing a full highlight, because it takes time. If you were doing this all up, we'll bump up and make a new batch of 30 when they get to the top, just so they can make it all processed the same. But I don't suggest that you do I've seen some stylists use 40 and do 40 actually blows the cuticle open and it does more damage to the hair. So slow, steady is better. All right. So now I have my client here and I am going to take, because I personally have found over the years, if you take diagonal sections, meaning the first two on a diagonal like a little triangle, you don't ever get a stripe when someone pulls their hair back. I learned this from one of my first bosses. It's been invaluable in 34 years of doing hair. So I took out my first slice there, right? Diagonal. Okay. I'm gonna pull this hair up. Now, you never put the comb down through any of this. So it's gonna be a matter of dexterity and patience. Do not get discouraged. It takes practice, like learning a sport, like learning to do anything that you have to master. Then we're holding it like this with the tension. We're gonna take I use also a metal, you see this? The metal comb, because it helps you pick up the hair, and you're gonna slowly jiggle through and weave through it. Do you guys see how fine this section is? I'm gonna just pick her up and like bring that closer. Do you guys see how thin and translucent that is? Okay, that is where I'm gonna place my first foil. So you see when that goes into the hair, you'll get a beautiful natural line. It's gonna look like it's growing out of her head. Okay, I take my comb, I place it into my foil like this. Some people do it backwards. I find it's easier to do it this way. Once again, once you're out in the real world, you can create your own style. Holding this tightly in my hand, all right? I put this under here. I put pressure, pull this out, clip the comb, put this in my hand, get my color, not too much, okay? There was my bracelet. Now, you see that first piece that I held to get that in there? The trick here is what's controlling this foil? My hand underneath. If it slides down like this one just did, you can put your comb back in, which this will happen sometimes, especially when you're new. You're gonna pull that, readjust it, put your hand up here, and you're gonna close this hair in. Okay? And we're gonna fold it. I'll do a few more so you guys can see. If you want to stand closer while I do them, be my guest. You can do 1 or 2 diagonal. One's enough for me. I'm going to go straight across now because her hairline's short. The more hair you leave in between, the darker the hair will be. The less space, the less space you leave, the more blonde you're gonna get. So if I want more around her face, I'm gonna keep these closed. If I want there to be more contrast, I'm gonna make the sections thicker. Does that make sense? Any questions? Hold it, place this under, pull out. Hand underneath, take the bottom hair, gently whirl it in and make sure it's all covered. Now, in my salon, I have foil that's this long. For hair this long, I would be using a longer foil. It would just make my life so much easier. But for argument's sake and teaching's sake, this is what we have here, so that's what we're gonna use. Fold.
What about the roots?
What, babe?
What about the roots?
So these are highlights, so we are not, this is all the way up to the roots. So a highlight is simply an accent color. If you were coloring her roots, you would get another color and touch up her roots. This is simply a face framing highlight to accent a color she already has. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just didn't see it like go all the way through.
Yeah, see, it's all the way up as far. Now, this is the other thing. I'll show you another thing. You can't go past the foil because this will swell and expand, especially the cheaper stuff. And if that expands and swells, especially once it's processing, because there's body heat, what's gonna happen? It's gonna ooze out to the scalp and you're gonna get tiger stripes and spots. And then you're gonna have to do corrective color. So you always get it, like I said, you can come closer and look, you get it as close to the scalp as you can get, but especially with this stuff, you gotta be careful because it expands. Excuse me. And always make sure to be careful not to take like a big chunk right in the front here. Like you see this, because what'll happen if this gets lightened? It's gonna look like a spot, right? So you wanna be very mindful to kind of a little bit over a little bit. Get the front, but be really careful with the pieces that you grab. The good news is hair color can be fixed. When we get more advanced, I will teach you how to fix bleed marks, boo-boos, tiger stripes. So here, Kaz, can you see how close that is?
Yeah.
Right? If I go any further, this is gonna, in the human world, the heat is gonna cause swell action. It's a mess. It's a mess. So it's better to get used to it. And if the hair is dark, make sure you saturate that nice and really get that in there. Now you see how this is like independently has control. You close it. Some stylists do this with the comb. They pat it down. You could do that too, whatever your style is. There's no right or wrong way, okay? So you guys can get started. Come on up. I'm gonna help you mix your color and we're gonna go to the next phase.